kin. It is said to revolve around blood, with DNA flowing from one generation to another. What, then, defines the essence of a family? Is it the essence of our genetic makeup? Or is there a more profound layer beneath the surface? Something crafted through joy and sorrow, through tales shared at night and soothing wounds, through being present in the moments that count. Boston, 2003. Rebecca Morgan carefully arranged the vibrant peonies in the elegant crystal vase on the dining table of her Beacon Hill brownstone. By the age of 32, she had crafted what many would deem an ideal existence. A thriving career in interior design catering to Boston's elite, a stunning home showcased in Architectural Digest, and a husband whose ascent in corporate law was paralleled only by his influential political ties. Her finger glided over the intricately carved mahogany of the antique table, a cherished wedding gift from James's parents. The table was surrounded by 12 chairs. One day, she envisioned, they would populate those spaces with children and grandchildren. Family meals, festive celebrations, the lovely whirlwind she had always aspired to bring to life. "You've been arranging those flowers for 10 minutes, James remarked, approaching her from behind. Their reflections merged in the ornate mirror on the wall, embodying the essence of Boston's success. She with her honey blonde bob and tailored dress, he in his power suit and confident smile. He embraced her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. They appear flawless, much like all that you handle. Rebecca reclined against him. Dr. Collins made the call. "This afternoon, I have an appointment." In the mirror, James's eyes connected with hers. "Perhaps we'll finally uncover some answers." Rebecca nodded, attempting to calm the anxious flutter in her stomach. They had been on the journey to conceive for 2 years without success. The initial tests had yielded inconclusive results. Today could provide answers and perhaps solutions. "I have a good feeling about this," James said, kissing her cheek before grabbing his briefcase. "The Harrington genes are strong. My mother had 4 children, remember? It's just taking a little time." "I hope you're right," Rebecca said, mustering a smile. "I've got the Maxwell meeting, followed by drinks with Senator Wells' chief of staff. I should be home by 8. He glanced at his Rolex. "Text me after the appointment?" Rebecca nodded, naturally. But as the door clicked shut, the warmth of her smile vanished. She rested her hand on her flat stomach, feeling the emptiness. Perhaps not for much longer, she wished. Countless times, she had envisioned the nursery, with soft green walls, a hand-painted mural of a meadow, and the antique crib she discovered at an estate sale in Concord. She was prepared, more than prepared. Dr. Collins' office was adorned in calming shades of blue and green, yet Rebecca felt a stark contrast to the tranquility of her surroundings as she faced the fertility specialist. She struggled to absorb the heavy words that hung in the air like leaden weights. "Premature ovarian failure," Dr. Collins explained softly. "It signifies that your ovaries have ceased egg production sooner than expected." "But I'm only 32, Rebecca whispered. "It's rare at your age, but it does occur. Your hormone tests confirm it." "My deepest apologies, Rebecca. Surely there are treatments, medications, procedures available?" Rebecca leaned in, her hands clutching her purse with such intensity that her knuckles turned pale. Dr. Collins' gaze was compassionate yet grounded in reality. "Given this diagnosis, the likelihood of conceiving naturally drops below 5%. Even with the most cutting-edge fertility treatments, utilizing your own eggs would be nearly unfeasible." The room appeared to sway just a bit. "What about donor eggs and surrogacy?" "Those are certainly options," Dr. Collins acknowledged. "Many couples create families through those methods. Adoption is another avenue as well. Choices lay before you, Rebecca." Choices. The term resonated emptily as she navigated the road home. Her mind clouded and tears intermittently obscuring her sight. The splendor of the Boston Common, just starting to awaken with the season, slipped past her unnoticed. All she could see was the nursery that might never come to be. She pulled into the driveway 2 hours before James was due home, allowing herself time to process, to breathe, to figure out how to share the news with him. She made tea, letting the comforting ritual soothe her a little. Donor eggs, surrogacy, adoption, various avenues leading to the same goal. the creation of a family. As the clock struck 8:30, Rebecca sat in the living room, her hands cradling a cold cup of tea. "Sorry I'm late," James called out. "A man associated with Wells is keen on supporting my judicial nomination next year if I choose to pursue that path. It could significantly alter the landscape." He walked into the living room, loosening his tie, and paused upon seeing her expression. "Rebecca, what happened? What did the doctor say?" Rebecca glanced up, absorbing her husband's striking features, searching for the appropriate words. "James, I can't have children. I have premature ovarian failure. My body can no longer produce viable eggs." James stood very still, as if the air had solidified around him. "What do you mean, you can't have children?" "I can't conceive naturally. My ovaries have stopped functioning properly. There must be treatments, medications," I asked. "The doctor says the chances are almost non-existent, even with treatment." James ran a hand through his dark hair, insisting on a second opinion. "Collins doesn't know everything. I've been researching all afternoon. The diagnosis is clear from my hormone levels." Rebecca stood, reaching for his hand. "But there are other options. We could use donor eggs or surrogacy or using another woman's eggs." James interrupted, his voice strange, "So the child wouldn't be biologically yours." Something cold settled in Rebecca's stomach. "No, not biologically, but I would carry the baby. It would still be your biological child." James pulled away, walking to the window that overlooked their carefully landscaped yard. "What about adoption?" she asked quietly. His back stiffened. When he turned, his face had changed in a way Rebecca couldn't quite define. "Adoption. Raising someone else's child, our child," Rebecca corrected. "Once we adopt, they would be our child." James shook his head. "You know my plans, Rebecca, the firm, the judicial nomination, eventually, politics. I need a complete family for my image. Children are non-negotiable. This would still be a complete family. I need my own bloodline," James said, his voice hardening. "My legacy matters. The Harrington name means something in this city." Rebecca stared at him, disbelief replacing her earlier distress. "Are you saying you only want children if they're biologically related to you?" "I'm being practical. My career trajectory requires certain things. A traditional family is one of them." "Traditional?" Rebecca's voice rose. "What about love, commitment, for better? Or worse, remember those vows?" James's face closed like a door shutting. "I married you to build a family, Rebecca. A family with children who share my DNA, children who will carry on the Harrington name and legacy. So what are you saying? That because I can't give you biological children, our marriage is what, void?" "I'm saying we want things now." Rebecca felt as if she'd been struck. "Now, nothing has changed about what I want. I still want a family with you. I still want us. You can't give me what I need." James's voice was eerily calm, as if he were discussing a business deal gone sour. "I've been patient for 2 years. I've supported the appointments, the treatments, but I need to face facts. My biological clock is ticking too." A hysterical laugh bubbled up in Rebecca's throat. "Your biological clock? You're 34. And I want to be a young, active father, not raising teenagers in my 50s. Rebecca's world was collapsing in on itself. The beautifully decorated room suddenly a stage set. As artificial as the man standing before her. "I can't believe what I'm hearing. You're talking about our marriage, our life together, as if it's some sort of contract with conditions. In many ways, marriage is a contract, and the terms have changed." The next morning, Rebecca woke to the sound of closet doors opening and closing. She found James in their bedroom, methodically removing suits from hangers and placing them in a suitcase. "What are you doing?" Her voice was hoarse from crying herself to sleep. "I'm gonna stay at the Mandarin Oriental for a while, until we figure things out." "Figure what out?" "Whether you can stomach being married to a barren woman." The word was bitter on her tongue. James continued packing. "You're being dramatic. This is a practical matter." "Practical?" Rebecca grabbed a shirt from his hands. "There is nothing practical about walking out on your wife the day after she receives devastating medical news. I'm sorry about your diagnosis, truly, but it doesn't change my needs." "Your needs?" Rebecca's voice cracked. "What about my needs? I just found out I can't have the children we've been planning for. I need my husband's support, not his abandonment." James zipped the suitcase closed, his movements precise and controlled. "I think we both need some space to consider our options." "Options?" Rebecca echoed hollowly. "You mean your options? Whether to stay with your infertile wife or find someone new who can give you biological children?" James didn't deny it, and that silence told Rebecca everything. When the divorce papers arrived 3 weeks later, Rebecca wasn't surprised, just hollow. In the cold conference room of James's law firm, she sat across from the man she had loved for 7 years, watching him sign away their marriage with the same pen he used to sign million-dollar contracts. "I married you to build a family," James said as he slid the papers across the polished mahogany. "Not to adopt strangers' children." Rebecca looked at him, really looked, seeing for the first time the ambition that burned brighter than any love he might have felt for her. "Those strangers would have been our children, James. Family isn't about DNA. It's about love." James straightened his tie. "You're entitled to your perspective, and I'm entitled to mine." The settlement was generous financially. James could afford to be magnanimous with money, but the social divorce was brutal. Their friends, mostly connected through James's firm and political circles, chose sides. Rebecca found herself uninvited from charity galas, garden parties, the social calendar that had filled her life, 2 months after signing the divorce papers. Rebecca saw them at her favorite restaurant, James and Catherine Wilson, the daughter of his law firm's managing partner. She was beautiful, 10 years younger than Rebecca, and looking at James with adoring eyes. "I heard she's already pregnant," the hostess whispered apologetically as she led Rebecca to a table far from the happy couple. "They're announcing their engagement next week." Rebecca didn't finish her meal. She left cash on the table and walked out, passing their table without being noticed, a ghost in her own life. That night, she stood in the nursery that would never be, the room she'd kept empty, waiting. She had to get out of Boston, away from the whispers, the pitying glances, the social circles that had closed ranks against her, away from the possibility of running into James and his fertile young fiancée. She called a real estate agent the next morning, sold the brownstone 2 weeks later, packed what mattered into her car, and left the rest for the estate sale. Boston had been her dream, but dreams change, or sometimes they're forced to. Chicago, 2003. The tiny apartment on Chicago's north side was nothing like the Beacon Hill brownstone, a studio with a kitchenette, a bathroom where the door hit the toilet if opened too widely, and a view of the brick wall of the neighboring building. But it was hers, paid for with the divorce settlement money that would eventually run out. Rebecca sat cross-legged on her new IKEA futon, laptop open, scrolling through job listings. Boston had been hers for the taking. Her client list included senators' wives, CEOs, old money families renovating historical homes. Chicago was different, anonymous, starting over. She had tried calling her former clients for references, only to discover James's reach extended further than she'd imagined. Somehow, word had spread that Rebecca Morgan was difficult, emotionally unstable, unreliable. The whisper campaign was effective. 3 design firms had interviewed her, then mysteriously rescinded their offers. "Fine," she muttered, closing the high-end design firm listings and opening a gig work site instead. "I don't need them, too." Days later, she was helping a young couple in Wicker Park choose paint colors for their first condo. The job paid a fraction of what she'd earned in Boston, but their genuine appreciation for her advice filled a small hole in her heart. "You have such an eye," the wife said, clutching paint swatches. "Our place is going to look amazing." Small jobs led to word-of-mouth recommendations. A paint consultation here, furniture arrangement there. Rebecca created a website showcasing her Boston portfolio. She printed business cards at Kinko's. She hustled in a way she'd never had to before, taking jobs others might consider beneath her expertise. For months in, she got a call from a local family-owned furniture store. "We need someone to design room displays," the owner explained. "Nothing fancy, just making our floor models look appealing. 20 hours a week, flexible schedule." It wasn't prestigious, it wasn't particularly creative, but it was steady income that would stretch her settlement money further. "I'll take it," Rebecca said. The routine helped. Work, home, take out dinner eaten while watching mindless TV. Occasionally a movie by herself, falling asleep to the unfamiliar sounds of Chicago traffic, waking up, repeat. She ignored the emptiness that greeted her each night, ignored the baby clothes stores she passed on her way to work, ignored the families in the park on weekends. This was her life now. She was adapting. "Until the children's bedroom, we need a showcase room for our new children's furniture line," her boss explained, leading Rebecca to an empty corner of the showroom floor. "Bunk beds, desks, toy storage, make it magical. Something that'll make parents open their wallets." Rebecca nodded professionally. "Any particular theme in mind?" "Something gender-neutral, whimsical but not babyish. These are for grade schoolers." For 3 days, Rebecca poured herself into the design. A woodland theme with canopies of painted leaves overhead. A reading nook beneath the Bottom bunk, star lights twinkling through the leafy ceiling. A desk built to look like a treehouse. Every detail perfect. When it was finished, she stood alone in the magical space she'd created for children who didn't exist, who would never exist, not for her. Something broke inside her. She sank onto the lower bunk, surrounded by the playful forest scene she'd painted, and sobbed, deep, heaving cries that seemed to come from her very soul. Everything she'd been holding back for 6 months poured out at once, echoing in the empty store after hours. "Hello? Is someone?" "Oh." Rebecca looked up, mortified to find a petite Asian woman standing in the doorway, concern on her face. "I'm so sorry," Rebecca gasped, wiping her eyes. "I thought everyone had left. I was dropping off flyers for the fundraiser." The woman said, gesturing to the stack in her arms. "The owner said it was okay." She hesitated, then stepped into the room. "This is beautiful. Did you design it?" Rebecca nodded, trying to compose herself. "It's for the new children's line." The woman sat beside her on the bunk bed. "I'm Mei Lin. I'm a social worker with the Chicago Children's Center. We help kids in the foster system." She glanced around. "This room. It would be a dream for the kids I work with." Rebecca wiped her eyes. "Thank you. I'm Rebecca, and I'm sorry for the breakdown. It's been a rough year." Mei Lin handed her a tissue from her purse. "No apologies needed. We all have our moments." She looked at Rebecca. "Thoughtfully, actually, I have a proposition. Our center needs help redesigning our visitation rooms, making them more welcoming for family visits. It's volunteer work, but maybe you'd be interested. You clearly have a gift." Rebecca blinked, surprised. Yes, I could help with that." Wonderful." Mei Lin handed her a card. "Come by next week. I'll give you a tour." The Chicago Children's Center was housed in a converted Victorian and Humboldt park. The exterior was cheerful yellow with blue trim, but inside, the rooms were institutional and worn, beige walls, mismatched furniture, fluorescent lighting that hummed and occasionally flickered. "We do what we can with our budget," Mei Lin explained as she showed Rebecca around. "But aesthetics aren't the priority when we're struggling to provide basics." Rebecca nodded, already mentally cataloging quick, inexpensive improvements. Paint would make a huge difference, and softer lighting, maybe some donated furniture. "Our visitation rooms are the priority," Mei Lin said, opening a door to a space that was supposed to facilitate family reunification but felt more like a sterile office. "This is where kids meet with their parents, often working toward reunification. We want it to feel safe, comfortable, like a home." "I can help with that," Rebecca said, ideas already flowing. "I could call some of my vendor contacts for donations over the next few weeks." Rebecca found herself spending more time at the center. She solicited paint donations from local hardware stores, convinced her furniture store boss to donate floor models that weren't selling, installed soft lamps and colorful rugs, painted murals on the walls. The work filled something in her that had been empty since Boston. Here, her design skills weren't about impressing wealthy clients. They were about creating safety and comfort for children who had neither. "You have a gift," Mei Lin told her one afternoon as they admired a newly transformed playroom. "Not just for design, but for understanding what these kids need." "Have you ever considered foster parenting?" Rebecca's heart twinged. "I don't think I'm in a position to." A commotion in the hallway interrupted her. Raised voices, a child crying. Mei Lin sighed. "New intake." "Excuse me." Rebecca followed her to the main office, where a harried-looking social worker was trying to calm 3 children. A boy around 7, a girl who looked about 5, and a baby maybe 10 months old, wailing in a carrier. "Their parents died in a car accident yesterday," the social worker explained. Quietly to Mei Lin, "No relatives have come forward. We need emergency placement." 3 siblings, Mei Lin frowned. "That's going to be tough. We don't have many homes that can take a sibling group this size. They'll have to be separated." The social worker said, resignation in her voice. "The Hendersons might take the baby. The Patels have room for 1 more, and we'll find somewhere for the oldest." Rebecca watched the 2 older children clutching each other's hands, the boy's thin shoulders rigid with tension as he tried to comfort his little sister. The baby's cries grew more desperate. "Can't you keep them together?" Rebecca asked. "They've just lost their parents." The social workers exchanged glances. "We try," Mei Lin said gently, "but finding a placement for 3 children together, especially including an infant, is nearly impossible." Rebecca knelt down to the children's level. The boy regarded her warily, his arm protectively around his sister. "Hi there," Rebecca said softly. "I'm..." Rebecca, what are your names? The boy hesitated. I'm Michael. This is Zoe. He pointed to the baby. That's Emma. Those are beautiful names, Rebecca said. I like how you're taking care of your sisters. That's really brave. Michael's chin trembled slightly before he squared his shoulders. I promised Mom I'd watch out for them. Something shifted in Rebecca's chest. A door opening where she thought there was only wall. She looked at the three children, suddenly seeing her own reflection in their loss, their uncertainty, their need. The fear in their eyes was the same fear she'd felt signing those divorce papers. Selling her home. Starting over in a strange city. No one should feel unwanted. Not them, not me. What if? Rebecca stood, turning to Mei-Lin. What if they stayed with me, just temporarily, until you find a permanent placement for all three? Mei-Lin's eyes widened. Rebecca, that's a huge undertaking, 3 children, including an infant, and you haven't been certified as a foster parent. I could start the process right away, Rebecca said, surprised by her own certainty. I have a studio apartment, but I could move, use some of my settlement money. I have space in my life, space in my heart. It's not that simple, the other social worker began. I know it's not simple, Rebecca interrupted, but separating them isn't simple either, at least this way. They stay together while you search for a permanent solution. Mei-Lin studied her for a long moment. Let me make some calls. By some miracle, or perhaps due to the desperate shortage of foster homes willing to take sibling groups, Rebecca was granted emergency temporary foster status. Her background check was expedited. Her apartment was hastily inspected. This is highly unusual, the licensing worker told her. You'll need to start proper foster parent training immediately, and find a larger apartment within 30 days. Rebecca nodded, signing form after form, her hands shaking slightly with the enormity of what she was undertaking. I understand. That night, her tiny studio crammed with borrowed cribs and air mattresses, Rebecca sat on the edge of her futon, watching 3 sleeping children, strangers who had suddenly become her responsibility. Michael slept rigidly, as if ready to wake at any sound. Zoe had finally cried herself to sleep, clutching a tattered stuffed rabbit. Baby Emma, exhausted from hours of crying, snuffled softly in the portable crib. What have I done? Rebecca thought, panic rising. I can't do this. I don't know how to be a mother. I don't have what it takes. Then Emma whimpered in her sleep, without thinking. Rebecca reached into the crib, gently rubbing the baby's back until she settled. The simple action, so instinctive, calmed them both. Maybe I don't know how to be a mother, Rebecca thought, but I can learn. I can try. I can love them. And in that moment, something that had been broken began to heal. Chicago, 2004 to 2005. Ms. Morgan, are you aware of the challenges of adopting 3 children as a single parent? The family court judge peered at Rebecca over her reading glasses, skepticism evident in every line of her face. Rebecca sat straight-backed in the courtroom. 9 months after the children had come into her life, what had begun as emergency foster care had evolved into something deeper, more permanent. When no relatives came forward to claim the siblings, Rebecca had made her decision. I'm fully aware, Your Honor. I've completed all required parenting classes, home studies, and financial reviews. Yes, I see that. The judge flipped through the file, but your income is concerning. Interior design consulting is unpredictable, especially since you've only been established in Chicago for a little over a year. Rebecca swallowed. I've been building my client base steadily. I've also developed an online design consultation business I can manage from home, which allows me flexibility for childcare. The judge nodded, unconvinced. And your support system? The home study mentions no family in Chicago. I've built a strong network through the Children's Center, my church, and a single-parent support group, Rebecca explained. Mei-Lin Chun has provided a letter detailing the community resources available to us. The judge studied her. Ms. Morgan, I'll be frank, courts prefer 2-parent households with stable, traditional incomes. You're proposing to raise 3 traumatized children alone, including an infant on a freelance income. The odds are stacked against you. Rebecca leaned forward. Your Honor, I understand your concerns. On paper, I may not be the ideal candidate. She took a deep breath. But these children have already lost everything. Their parents, their home, their sense of security. The one thing they have left is each other. She gestured to where Michael, Zoe, and Emma sat with a court-appointed guardian. Michael has nightmares where he can't find his sisters. Zoe stops speaking entirely when separated from her siblings during therapy sessions. And Emma, she's learning to crawl now, and she crawls straight to Michael and Zoe every time. Rebecca's voice grew stronger. Your Honor, I may not have much, but I have enough love for all 3 of them. I have enough determination to overcome whatever challenges we face. and I have the fierce commitment to keep these siblings together, no matter what it takes. The courtroom was silent when she finished. The judge removed her glasses, rubbing the bridge of her nose. Ms. Morgan, this court has seen many well-intentioned foster parents. Good hearts aren't always enough for the realities of raising traumatized children. I know your honor, but good hearts are where healing begins. The judge replaced her glasses, studying Rebecca for a long moment. I'm taking this case under advisement. We'll reconvene next week for my decision. 7 days of agonized waiting, 7 nights of watching the children sleep, terrified they would be taken away, separated, lost. To her, on the 8th day, Rebecca returned to the courtroom alone, hands trembling, after careful consideration of all factors, including the children's best interest in remaining together, the extraordinary circumstances of their placement, and Ms. Morgan's demonstrated commitment during the foster period. The judge paused, looking directly at Rebecca. This court grants the petition for adoption of Michael, Zoe, and Emma Sullivan by Rebecca Morgan. Rebecca's breath left her in a rush. Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you. The judge offered a rare smile. Don't thank me yet, Ms. Morgan. Your real work is just beginning. And it was. The first year was a blur of exhaustion, financial anxiety, and moments of overwhelming doubt. Their new apartment, a modest 3-bedroom in a working-class neighborhood, strained her budget, childcare costs for Emma, while Rebecca worked threatened to sink them entirely until a neighbor, a retired teacher, offered to watch the baby at a reduced rate. I raised 5 of my own, Ms. Abernathy said, expertly bouncing Emma on her hip. One more little one keeps me young. Rebecca worked frantically during the hours the children were at school and daycare, taking every design job she could find, building her online consultation business in the evening hours after bedtime. Some nights, she slept only 3 or 4 hours, running on caffeine and determination. The children's trauma manifested in different ways. Michael was hypervigilant, checking the locks multiple times each night, hoarding food in his backpack, refusing to let his sisters out of his sight at the playground. They're safe, sweetie. Rebecca would assure him, we're all safe now, you don't know that. He would reply, eyes too old for his face, bad things happen to people we love. Zoe had selective mutism, speaking only to Michael and gradually to Rebecca at home. At school, she was silent, communicating with nods and head shakes, frustrating her teachers and isolating her from potential friends. Emma, too young to understand what she'd lost, was nevertheless affected by the trauma around her. She was clingy, crying hysterically if Rebecca left the room, waking multiple times each night. There were days Rebecca wondered if the judge had been right to doubt her. Days when the financial stress, the emotional demands, and the sheer physical exhaustion made her question everything. One Tuesday morning, 6 months after the adoption was finalized, everything fell apart at once. The client who owed Rebecca $2,000 for a completed project announced they were filing for bankruptcy. The washing machine flooded the bathroom. Emma spiked a fever of 103, and the school called. Michael had punched another boy who'd teased him about not having real parents. Rebecca sat on the bathroom floor, mopping up soapy water while a feverish Emma wailed in the portable crib she'd set up to keep an eye on her. The school's voicemail played on speaker. The principal's voice stern as he requested an immediate conference. Something inside Rebecca broke. She dropped the mop, buried her face in her soaking wet hands and sobbed. A small hand touched her shoulder. Zoe stood there, 5 years old and solemn, offering a slightly dirty stuffed rabbit. Bunny helps when I'm sad, she whispered, her voice raspy from disuse. Rebecca looked up through her tears at the little girl, so wounded yet finding the courage to comfort an adult. She accepted the rabbit, then opened her arms. Zoe crawled into them without hesitation. We're going to be okay, Rebecca whispered, not sure if she was reassuring Zoe or herself. Somehow we're going to make this work. That night, after Emma's fever broke, after a difficult conversation with Michael about better ways to handle bullies, after the washing machine repairman presented a bill that made her stomach clench, Rebecca made a decision. She couldn't keep working this way, stretched between too many clients, always scrambling. She needed to focus, to build something more sustainable, something she could do while being present for the children. At 2 a.m., fueled by desperation and inspiration, she launched a website, Room by Room Designs, virtual interior design for real budgets. The concept was simple. Clients would send photos, measurements, and their budget. Rebecca would create detailed design plans they could implement themselves, step by step, purchasing pieces as their budget allowed. She targeted young families, first-time homeowners, people who couldn't afford traditional interior design services but wanted homes that reflected their personalities. The price point was accessible, $250 for a room design, a fraction of her former rates, but something that could be completed in a few hours after the children were in bed. To her shock, the concept took off. A mommy blogger featured her services, then a budget living website. Within 6 months, she had a steady stream of virtual clients, enough that she could be pickier about which in-person jobs to accept, focusing on those that offered the best pay for limited hours. Slowly, incrementally, life began to stabilize. There were still crises, Michael's nightmares, Zoe's silence at school, Emma's separation anxiety, but there were also triumphs. Michael's first day on a science project, a model of the solar system. Rebecca had stayed up all night helping him rebuild after the dog next door knocked over the original. Zoe's piano lessons, discovered by accident when she'd wandered to a neighbor's piano during a block party, and picked out a simple melody by ear. Emma's first steps, taken confidently from Rebecca's arms to Michael's. The siblings' bond visible in the baby's determined toddle and the boy's proud tears, and Rebecca's business, growing by word of mouth and online reviews, providing enough income that she could finally breathe a little easier. 2 years after the adoption, they celebrated with a trip to the Lake Michigan shore, a weekend in a small rental cottage paid for with carefully saved design fees. As the children played in the shallow water, Rebecca sat on the beach, watching Michael help Emma jump over tiny waves, Zoe meticulously building a sandcastle nearby. My family, she thought with a sense of wonder, not the family I imagined, but the family I was meant to have. That night, as she tucked the children into bed in the small cottage, Michael asked a question that had clearly been on his mind. Mom, the words still gave Rebecca a thrill each time he used it. Are you sad that you got stuck with us instead of having your own kids? Rebecca sat on the edge of his bed, choosing her words carefully. I'm not stuck with you, Michael. I chose you, all 3 of you, and you are my own kids, but we're not like from your body. He persisted. Some of the kids at school say adopted kids aren't real kids. Those children don't understand what makes a real family. Rebecca said firmly, family isn't about whose body you came from. It's about who loves you, who shows up for you, who makes a life with you. She brushed his hair from his forehead. You and your sisters are the children of my heart. That's as real as it gets. Michael considered this, then nodded slowly. I'm glad we're your kids. I'm glad too, sweetie. More than you can possibly know. Over the next decade, their little family flourished. Rebecca's virtual design business evolved into Morgan Family Designs, a boutique firm specializing in family-friendly spaces. She hired 2 assistants, then 4, then opened a small storefront showcasing sustainable furniture and accessories. The children thrived, each finding their path. Michael showed an aptitude for science and mathematics, his protective nature channeling into a fascination with how things worked, how to solve problems systematically. By high school, he was winning regional science competitions, his project on affordable water filtration systems taking him to national finals. Zoe's selective mutism gradually improved with therapy, though she remained quiet by nature. Her voice, when she did use it, came out most clearly through music. Her piano playing evolved from simple melodies to complex compositions, her emotions finding expression in the keys when words failed her. Emma, the baby who knew no life before Rebecca, grew into an exuberant child with an artist's eye. She carried a camera everywhere by age 10, documenting their family life, capturing the beauty in ordinary moments. Rebecca might have missed their home. Once a spare apartment furnished with second-hand finds, became a warm, creative space reflecting all their personalities. Michael's corner filled with books and scientific models, Zoe's with her keyboard and music sheets, Emma's with photographs and art supplies. Rebecca's design aesthetic held it all together, creating harmony from their beautiful chaos. They never returned to Boston. Rebecca built her new life firmly rooted in Chicago, letting her past remain in the rearview mirror. Occasionally, she would see James Harrington's name in the news, made partner at a prestigious firm, appointed to a judgeship, mentioned as a rising political star with a perfect family by his side. Each time, she would feel a momentary pang, not of regret but of something like pity. For all his success, James had missed this, the messy, imperfect, glorious reality of loving children exactly as they were. For 10 years, Rebecca kept her past private. The children knew she had been married before, that her ex-husband lived in Boston, that the marriage had ended badly, but she spared them the details, the rejection that still sometimes haunted her in quiet moments. She had built something beautiful from that heartbreak, something real, something that mattered more than any legacy or bloodline ever could, until the day it all circled back, like fate closing a loop. Chicago, 2023, Mom, have you seen my MIT brochure? I need it for the college counselor meeting. Michael called from his bedroom. He sound of drawers opening and closing punctuating his question. Rebecca looked up from her laptop, where she was finalizing designs for a children's hospital wing renovation. Check the magazine rack in the living room. You were reading it last night at 17. Michael towered over her now, his lanky frame and serious eyes reminiscent of the solemn 7-year-old who had once appointed himself protector of his sisters, but a decade of security and love had softened his wariness into thoughtful confidence. Emma bounded into the kitchen, camera in hand as always. Mom, I need you to sign this permission form. The school art magazine wants to use my photo series on urban renewal. That's wonderful, sweetie, Rebecca said, accepting the form from her 15-year-old. Emma's artistic eye had developed into real talent, her photographs showing depth beyond her years. Zoe drifted in last, quiet as always, though no longer selectively mute. At 16, she moved through the world with a gentle grace, her emotions expressed most freely through the music she composed. Don't forget I have the recital Saturday, she reminded Rebecca. Professor Winters thinks a scout from Berkeley might attend. It's on the calendar, highlighted in gold, Rebecca assured her, kissing the top of her head. I wouldn't miss it for anything. The morning chaos of a house with 3 teenagers was a symphony Rebecca had learned to conduct. Permission slips signed, lunches packed, schedules coordinated, rides arranged. The frightened children who had come into her life had grown into remarkable young adults, each with their own dreams taking shape. Found it. Michael emerged triumphantly with the MIT brochure. Mom, I've been researching some other Boston schools too. Harvard has an amazing bioengineering program, and there's this summer internship at Massachusetts General. Rebecca froze slightly at the casual mention of Boston. Boston? I thought you were focusing on Chicago schools or maybe California. Michael shrugged, tucking the brochure into his backpack. Boston has the highest concentration of top science programs in the country, and the research opportunities are incredible. Chicago has excellent programs too, Rebecca said, trying to keep her voice light. Northwestern University of Chicago, I know, but I want to cast a wide net, Michael said. Besides, I've never even been to the East Coast. It would be a new adventure. Before Rebecca could respond, Emma chimed in. If Michael goes to Boston, can we visit? I've seen amazing photographs of the historic architecture. It would be perfect for my portfolio. Rebecca managed a smile that felt stiff. We'll see. Boston winters are brutal. You might prefer California sunshine. Zoe, perceptive as always, studied her mother's face. Mom, do you not like Boston for some reason? No, it's not that, Rebecca said quickly. There are so many options to consider. The children exchanged glances, the silent communication they'd perfected over years. Well, I'm keeping my options open, Michael said finally. The applications aren't due for months anyway. The morning routine resumed, the moment passing as the children gathered their things and headed out, Michael and Zoe to high school, Emma to her arts magnet program. Rebecca watched from the doorway as they walked toward the bus stop, Michael's arm casually draped over Emma's shoulder as he teased her about something, Zoe smiling quietly at their banter. My whole world, she thought, when did they grow up so fast? The Boston question lingered through the day as Rebecca worked on client projects. She had successfully avoided the city for 20 years, building a new life, a new identity as far from James Harrington as she could manage. The thought of Michael there, possibly crossing paths with James or his family, she pushed the thought aside. Michael deserved every opportunity. She wouldn't let her past dictate his future. That evening, Rebecca sat at the dining table reviewing contracts while the children worked on homework, the comfortable domesticity of the scene, Emma sketching, Zoe with headphones on as she worked on a composition. Michael's laptop open to research filled her with quiet contentment until Michael's voice broke the silence. Mom, who's James Harrington? Rebecca's pen froze mid-signature. She looked up to find Michael staring at his laptop screen, his expression confused. What? Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. James Harrington, Michael repeated. I was researching Boston legal internships and his name came up as a state judge, but then I found this old article about, he trailed off, his eyes meeting hers, about you and him, your wedding announcement in the Boston Globe. The room went still. Emma put down her sketchbook. Zoe removed her headphones. Michael, why are you researching my ex-husband? Rebecca asked carefully. I wasn't, he said. I swear. His name came up in an article about judicial internships, and when I was Reading his bio, it mentioned his first marriage. The name Rebecca Morgan caught my eye. So I searched both your names and found the wedding announcement. Then more articles. Rebecca set her pen down, her hands suddenly unsteady. What else did you find? Michael hesitated, glancing at his sisters. There was a society page mention of your divorce, and then an announcement of his marriage to Catherine Wilson 6 months later, and their son's birth announcement 7 months after that. The familiar pain, dulled by years but never completely gone, throbbed briefly in Rebecca's chest. I see, Mom. Emma's voice was tentative. You never talk about your life in Boston, or your ex-husband. There wasn't much to say. Rebecca said, we married young, it didn't work out. I moved to Chicago for a fresh start. But why didn't it work out? Michael pressed. These articles make it seem like you were this perfect Boston power couple. He was a rising star attorney, you were a sought-after designer. For the city's elite, what happened? Rebecca looked at the three faces watching her expectantly. She had protected them from this truth, not wanting them to ever feel like second choices or replacements for the biological children she couldn't have. But they weren't children anymore, and secrets had a way of growing heavier with time. The marriage ended because I couldn't have biological children, she said quietly. I was diagnosed with premature ovarian failure. James wanted children, his own. Biological children, to continue the Harrington name and legacy. When he learned I couldn't provide that, he left. The silence that followed was deafening. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Zoe's face went completely still. Michael looked thunderstruck. He left you because you couldn't have babies? Emma finally asked, her voice small. Rebecca nodded. He said adoption wasn't an option. He needed his own bloodline. The words still tasted bitter. Even 20 years later. But that's horrible. Michael said, his hands clenching into fists on the table. What kind of man does that? An ambitious one. Rebecca said simply, James had a very specific vision for his life and career. A traditional family with biological children was part of that vision. When I couldn't fulfill that role, he found someone who could. Is that why you adopted us? Zoe asked quietly, because he made you feel like you weren't enough without children. No, Rebecca said firmly, reaching across the table to take her hand. Never think that. I adopted you because the moment I saw you three, I knew you were my children. My heart recognized you before my head caught up. She looked at each of them and turned. James's rejection hurt deeply, yes, but it also freed me to find you, to build the family I was meant to have. Michael was still frowning at his laptop. So this guy just, traded you in for a younger model who could give him babies? Rebecca winced. That's a bit simplistic, but essentially yes, Catherine was the daughter of his law firm's managing partner. Their marriage was advantageous professionally as well as personally. And now he's some big-shot judge? Emma asked, indignation coloring her voice. State court, yes, from what I've gathered over the years. He's been very successful. Rebecca didn't mention the occasions she'd seen his name mentioned as a potential candidate for higher appointments. The photos of him with senators and governors at fundraisers. Michael turned his laptop around, showing a web page. He's more than just a judge now, Mom. He's running for state senate. Rebecca felt a chill. The screen showed a campaign website. Judge James Harrington for Massachusetts State Senate. Family, integrity, results. A smiling James, older, distinguished with touches of gray at his temples, stood with Catherine and 2 college-age children, a son and daughter, the perfect political family. His campaign slogan is, family values, fiscal responsibility. Michael read, his voice hardening. There's a whole section here about his commitment to the sacred bonds of parenthood and traditional family structures. Emma made a disgusted noise. Hypocrite much? He literally abandoned his wife because she couldn't have babies, and here he is talking about character and standing by your commitments. Michael continued, scrolling through the website. It says he's hosting a major campaign fundraising gala at the Ritz-Carlton Boston next month. All the state's political elite will be there. Zoe, who had been quiet, suddenly looked up. Did you ever wish you could tell people the truth about him? About what he did? Rebecca considered the question. In the early days, yes, I was angry and hurt, but over time I realized living well was its own reward. Building this family with you has been more fulfilling than any revenge could be. The children exchanged another of their looks, the silent communication that sometimes excluded her. What? Rebecca asked, recognizing the signs of a brewing idea. Nothing, Michael said too quickly. It's unfair that he gets to reinvent himself as this family values champion when he threw away his marriage the minute it got tough. Life is often unfair, Rebecca said gently, but we can't let that embitter us. The conversation shifted to other topics, but Rebecca noticed her children were unusually quiet for the rest of the evening. When they retreated to their rooms, she could hear the murmur of voices as they moved between each other's doorways, discussing something intently. A week passed. Michael stopped mentioning Boston schools at the dinner table. though Rebecca noticed MIT brochures and Harvard View books still scattered around his room. The children seemed to have dropped the subject of James Harrington, much to her relief, until she found the invitation. She was gathering laundry from Michael's room when she spotted it on his desk, an elegant cream-colored card with gold embossing. The committee to elect Judge James Harrington cordially invites you to a gala. Reception at the Ritz-Carlton, Boston. Her heart stuttered. Why would Michael have an invitation to James's fundraiser? She picked it up, turning it over in her hands. It appeared legitimate, not something printed from a website. Beneath it was another document, an acceptance email for a summer internship with the Harrington for Senate campaign. Rebecca sank onto Michael's bed, her legs suddenly unsteady. What was happening? Had Michael applied for an internship with her ex-husband's campaign? Why would he do that? She found a third document, a confirmation email from a Boston hotel, reserving a room for 3 nights, the dates coinciding with James's gala. She was still sitting there, the papers in her lap, when Michael came home from school. Mom, he stood in the doorway, his backpack slung over one shoulder. His eyes fell to the documents in her hands, and his expression shifted from surprise to determination. I can explain, please do, Rebecca said quietly. Michael set his backpack down and sat beside her on the bed. After what you told us about him, about how he treated you, we couldn't just let it go. This guy is running for office on a family values platform when he abandoned his wife at her most vulnerable moment. Rebecca asked, though she already knew. Michael nodded. Zoe, Emma, and me, we talked about it and we came up with a plan. Rebecca repeated flatly. I applied for the campaign internship using my academic credentials with my science awards and GPA. I was a perfect candidate. They don't know I'm connected to you. I used Dad's last name, Sullivan. Rebecca stared at him. Michael rarely referred to himself by his birth father's surname. You deliberately deceived them to get this internship. I didn't lie about my qualifications, Michael said defensively. I just omitted our connection and the hotel reservation, the gala invitation. Michael took a deep breath. The campaign is giving interns tickets to the gala? It's a big networking opportunity. Zoe arranged to perform at the gala through her piano teacher, who has connections with the Boston arts community, and Emma applied for a photography position through her arts program. Documenting the event for a local magazine, Rebecca felt lightheaded. So all 3 of you have manipulated your way into this event. To what end exactly? We're not planning anything dramatic, Michael assured her. We want him to see us, to see the family you built without him. The children he said weren't good enough because they wouldn't carry his precious DNA. Rebecca stood, pacing the small bedroom. This isn't your battle to fight, Michael. What happened between James and me was 20 years ago. But he's still benefiting from the image he's created, Michael argued, running on family values when he showed none. It's not right. Life isn't always right or fair. That doesn't mean we should let people like him succeed by lying about who they really are. Rebecca turned to face her son, seeing in his passionate defense echoes of her own younger self. And what exactly do you hope to accomplish? Publicly embarrass him, create a scene that could backfire badly? We don't want to create a scene, Michael said. We just want to be there, to be seen, to be a silent reminder of the family he rejected. He paused, choosing his words carefully. And maybe we thought you might want to be there too, to show him that his rejection didn't break you, that you built something beautiful without him. Rebecca felt tears threatening. The love behind their misguided plan touched her deeply, even as the potential for disaster alarmed her. You should have talked to me first. Would you have agreed? No, she admitted. Probably not. That's why we didn't tell you. I need to think about this, Rebecca said, gathering the papers. And I need to talk to your sisters. That evening, Rebecca called a family meeting. Emma and Zoe admitted their parts in the plan, both equally determined and unapologetic. He hurt you, Mom, Emma said fiercely. He threw you away like you were nothing. And now he's pretending to be this paragon of family values. You've done everything for us, Zoe added, her quiet voice strengthening with emotion. You kept us together when the system wanted to separate us. You worked so hard to give us opportunities. You deserve vindication. Rebecca looked at these 3 remarkable young people, their faces alight with protective love for her. How could she explain that James Harrington's opinion had ceased to matter to her years ago, that the family they built together was vindication enough? But looking at their determined faces, she realized this wasn't just about her anymore. It was about them, their identity, their journey, their need to face the man who had deemed adoption an unacceptable way to build a family. If we do this, she said slowly, we do it with dignity, no scenes, no confrontations, no manipulations beyond what you've already set in motion. 3. Faces brightened. You're agreeing? Michael asked incredulously. I'm considering it, Rebecca corrected. But first, I want to know exactly what each of you has planned. No surprises. As they laid out their scheme, Michael working behind the scenes as a campaign intern, Zoe playing piano during the gala reception, Emma photographing the event. Rebecca had to admit it was clever. They had found legitimate ways to be present at the gala, using their genuine talents. And what happens when he sees me? Rebecca asked, because he will recognize me. Even after 20 years, the siblings exchange glances. That's kind of the point. Emma said, we want him to see that you're successful, confident, and that you've built an amazing family, the very thing he said you couldn't have without him. Rebecca sighed. And you don't think this is petty, holding on to a 20-year-old grievance? It's not petty to stand up for the truth, Michael argued. He's marketing himself as something he's not. If he hadn't gone into politics, maybe it wouldn't matter, but he's asking people to trust him based on values he himself betrayed. Rebecca looked at her 3 children, so passionate, so protective, so determined to right a wrong they felt had been done to her. This wasn't really about James, she realized. It was about them claiming their place in her story, asserting that they were a real family, as real as any biological one. All right, she said finally, but we do this my way, no ambushes, no public confrontations. We go, we are seen, we leave with our dignity intact. Agreed. 3 heads nodded solemnly. And if at any point I say it's time to go, we go, no arguments. Agreed, they chorused. Rebecca felt a flutter of anxiety. After 20 years, she was returning to Boston, to the world she'd left behind, and she was doing it on James Harrington's territory. It was madness. Yet something in her responded to the challenge. Maybe it was time to close this circle, to face the man who had once deemed her unworthy, because she couldn't bear his children. To show him the family she had built without him. Not for revenge, not even for vindication, but for closure, for her children, and perhaps, finally, for herself. Boston, 2023. The Ritz-Carlton Boston glittered with old money elegance, the kind Rebecca had once navigated with practiced ease during her first life in this city. Now, standing in the hotel suite she shared with her daughters, she smoothed the midnight blue gown she'd chosen for the evening, fighting the flutter of nerves in her stomach. You look beautiful, Mom, Emma said, adjusting her own simple black dress, professional enough for her role as event photographer, elegant enough for the gala setting. Zoe nodded agreement, elegant in a silver gown appropriate for a performing pianist. You don't look nervous at all, Rebecca smiled ruefully. Then my acting skills have improved with age. Michael knocked and entered, looking startlingly grown up in his dark suit. For a moment, Rebecca felt a pang. He resembled his birth father in profile, the father he'd lost too young, but the determined set of his jaw, the protective way he looked at his mother and sisters, that was all his own. The campaign team is already downstairs, he reported. Judge Harrington and his family are doing a private meet and greet with the major donors before the main event. He checked his watch. Zoe, you should head down, the musicians are gathering. Zoe nodded, picking up her small evening bag. Remember, I'm playing during the cocktail hour, and then again when the speeches begin, and I'll be circulating, taking candids. Emma added, checking her camera. The Boston Arts Quarterly editor is expecting a full photo essay. Rebecca marveled at her children's composure, their careful planning. And you, Michael, what's your role tonight? I'll be helping coordinate the donor introductions, making sure the judge's remarks are loaded into the teleprompter, and generally being an efficient, invisible presence. He grinned. The campaign manager already loves me, said I'm the most organized intern they've ever had. Despite her anxiety, Rebecca felt a surge of pride in these 3 remarkable young people. Just remember our agreement. We're here to be seen, not to create a scene. Dignity above all. They nodded solemnly. Michael and Zoe departed first, heading downstairs to assume their positions. Emma lingered, adjusting her camera strap. Are you sure you want to do this, Mom? She asked quietly. It's not too late to back out. Rebecca took a deep breath, considering the question. Was she ready to face James after all these years, to stand in a room full of Boston's elite, many of whom had known her in her previous life, to risk the pain of old wounds reopening? She thought of James's campaign website, the sanctimonious language about family values and commitment. She thought of the 3 children who had planned this entire operation out of love for her, out of a desire to be acknowledged as a real family. I'm sure, she said finally, some circles need closing. The ballroom was transformed for the evening, glowing with subtle lighting that highlighted the architectural details while flattering the wealthy, influential attendees. Rebecca paused at the entrance, taking in the scene. Crystal chandeliers, white-jacketed servers with trays of champagne, Boston's power brokers in dark suits and designer dresses, all gathered to support James Harrington's Senate bid. From her position, she could see Zoe at the grand piano, her slender fingers moving gracefully over the keys as she played a tasteful classical piece. Emma circulated with her camera, professional and unobtrusive as. She captured candid moments, and there, on the far side of the room near a small stage, was Michael, clipboard in hand, conferring with an older woman who appeared to be the event coordinator. They fit in perfectly, her children, as if they belonged in this rarefied world. And then she saw him. James Harrington stood in the center of a small circle of admirers, still handsome at 54, his dark hair now distinguished with gray at the temples. He laughed at something someone said, his hand resting casually on the back of his wife, Catherine, still elegant, still beautiful, still the perfect political spouse. 20 years since he had looked her in the eye and told her she wasn't enough without the ability to bear his biological children. 20 years of building a life without him, of proving him wrong in every way that mattered. Rebecca took a glass of champagne from a passing server and stepped fully into the ballroom. She didn't approach James immediately. Instead, she circulated slowly around the periphery, taking in the atmosphere, occasionally nodding to a face she vaguely recognized. A few people looked at her with momentary confusion. A familiar face they couldn't quite place. She was studying a large campaign poster, Harrington for Senate, family values, fiscal responsibility. When she felt someone's gaze on her, turning slightly, she found Catherine Harrington staring at her from across the room, her perfect smile faltering as recognition dawned. Rebecca nodded slightly, raising her champagne glass in a small salute. Catherine's eyes widened. She leaned toward James, murmuring something in his ear. James turned, scanning the crowd until his eyes found Rebecca. The shock on his face was almost worth the price of admission. For a long moment, their gazes held across the crowded room. 2 decades fell away in an instant. Rebecca saw the flicker of disbelief, the momentary uncertainty, the quick calculation behind his eyes as he tried to determine what her presence meant. Then his political training took over. He whispered something to Catherine, patted her arm reassuringly, and began making his way through the crowd toward Rebecca. She stayed where she was, letting him come to her. Her heart pounded, but she kept her composed, taking a small sip of champagne as he approached Rebecca. He said when he reached her, his voice controlled but tension evident in the set of his shoulders, "This is unexpected." "Hello, James," she replied, pleased that her voice remained steady. "You look well, success agrees with you." His eyes scanned her face, searching for clues to her intentions. "Thank you, you look remarkable. I didn't realize you were back in Boston, just visiting," she said. "When I heard about your Senate campaign I was curious." "I see." His politician smile didn't reach his eyes. "Well, it's kind of you to support the campaign, though I have to admit, given our history, I'm a bit surprised." "Are you?" Rebecca raised an eyebrow. "I've always believed in acknowledging the truth, no matter how uncomfortable." James's smile tightened. "Perhaps we could speak privately. There's a quiet room just off the—" "I don't think that's necessary," Rebecca interrupted smoothly. "I'm not here to disrupt your evening, James. I'm here to witness it." Before he could respond, the event coordinator approached, Michael a half step behind her. "Judge Harrington, the major donors are assembled for the photo opportunity, and then we'll begin the formal program. In 10 minutes, the coordinator gestured toward the stage. "Thank you, Margaret. I'll be right there." James's eyes never left Rebecca's face. "Is there anything else you need, Judge Harrington?" Michael asked, his voice perfectly professional despite standing face to face with the man who had abandoned his mother. James glanced at Michael briefly. "No, thank you." He paused, clearly searching for the young man's name. "Michael Sullivan, sir. I'm one of your campaign interns." James nodded distractedly, his focus returning to Rebecca. "We'll continue this conversation later," he said quietly, after the speeches. "I look forward to hearing what you have to say about family values," Rebecca replied, her tone mild but meaningful. A flicker of unease crossed James's face before his political mask slipped back into place. He nodded curtly and moved away, following the coordinator toward the stage. Michael remained behind, his eyes meeting Rebecca's. "You okay?" he murmured. "Perfectly." She assured him. "Go. Do your job." "I'm fine." As Michael returned to his duties, Rebecca found a seat near the back of the room, where she could observe without being obvious. From this vantage point, she could see Catherine Harrington watching her, concern evident in her perfect features. The formal program began with introductions from the campaign chair, followed by a glowing endorsement from the current governor. Throughout it all, James maintained his composed, statesman-like expression, though Rebecca noticed, his eyes occasionally scanning the crowd, finding her, then moving away, and then Zoe began to play. The campaign had clearly requested something dignified yet emotionally stirring as background for James's entrance to the podium. But Zoe had chosen a different piece, a haunting, complex melody that Rebecca recognized immediately. It was Pachelbel's Canon in D, the Pi. T that had played as Rebecca walked down the aisle at their wedding 23 years ago. James recognized it too, as he approached the podium. His step faltered almost imperceptibly. His eyes found Zoe at the piano, then darted to Rebecca, confusion evident. Rebecca kept her expression neutral. Though her heart swelled with love for her daughter's subtle, powerful choice, no one else in the room would understand the significance. But James knew. The reminder of vows made and broken hung in the air. Between them, distinguished guests, friends, and supporters, James began. His practiced voice warm and confident despite his momentary hesitation. I stand before you tonight humbled by your support and inspired by your faith in our shared vision for Massachusetts. As he continued his speech, outlining his platform and qualifications, Rebecca observed the man she had once loved. He was good at this, the right blend of gravitas and approachability, conviction and humility. At the heart of my campaign are the values that have guided my life and career, James continued, integrity, responsibility, and above all, family. He gestured toward Catherine and their 2 adult children seated in the front row. My wife Catherine and our children, Brandon and Jessica, remind me daily of what truly matters in this world. The bonds that connect us, the commitments that define us. Rebecca felt a sharp pang despite herself. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. In today's world, we need leaders who understand that strong families build strong communities, James continued, who recognize that the promises we make to each other are sacred. His voice trailed off as his eyes caught movement at the back of the room. Emma had moved to a better position for photographs, her camera raised, lens pointed directly at him. For a moment, James seemed transfixed by the young woman with the camera, something about her face causing him to lose his train of thought. He glanced down at his notes. We need leaders who understand that character is revealed in how we respond to challenges. His eyes drifted to Michael, who stood near the teleprompter. His stance attentive but his gaze direct and unflinching. Again, James faltered, a flicker of confusion crossing his features. Leaders who believe that our legacy is defined by... He stopped again, his gaze returning to Zoe at the piano, then to Rebecca in the audience, then back to Emma with her camera. The audience began to murmur, concerned by the uncharacteristic stumbling of the usually polished candidate. Rebecca saw the moment it clicked. The moment James realized who these young people were, what their presence alongside her meant. His face paled slightly, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the podium. Our legacy, he continued, his voice slightly strained, is defined by our actions, not just our words. The irony of his statement hung in the air, at least for the 5 people who understood the full context. James recovered, finishing his speech to enthusiastic applause, but his eyes kept returning to Rebecca and the 3 young adults whose presence had so unsettled him. The pianist, the photographer, the attentive intern, 3 young faces that shouldn't be familiar but somehow were, connected to the woman he had discarded 20 years ago because she couldn't have children. As the formal program concluded and the crowd dispersed into mingling, Rebecca remained in her seat, watching James work the room with Catherine. At his side, his politician's smile remained firmly in place, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes kept tracking her children's movements around the room. Finally, as she had known he would, James made his way to her. This time with Catherine beside him. Rebecca, he said, his voice low and controlled, could we speak privately now? Rebecca considered the request, then nodded. Of course. They moved to a small anteroom off the main ballroom, Catherine following despite not being explicitly invited. When the door closed behind them, James's composure slipped slightly. What exactly are you doing here? He demanded. Is this some kind of stunt? Rebecca raised an eyebrow. I'm attending a public campaign event, James. There's no law against that. And those young people, the pianist, the photographer, the intern, they're with you, aren't they? This is some kind of coordinated ambush. They're my children, Rebecca said simply, and they wanted to see the man who once decided that adoption wasn't good enough for his family image. Catherine's eyes widened. Your children you adopted? Yes, Rebecca said, turning to her. 3 siblings who had lost their parents. They would have been separated in the foster system. But I couldn't let that happen, not when I had enough love for all of them. James ran a hand through his hair, his political mask slipping further. So you brought them here to what? Embarrass me? Disrupt my campaign? No, Rebecca said calmly. They came here because they wanted to see the man who rejected their mother for being infertile. the man who claimed to value family while abandoning his wife at her most vulnerable moment, the man who now campaigns on family values and sacred commitments. Catherine turned to James, confusion evident. What is she talking about, James? James's jaw tightened. Rebecca is referring to the end of our marriage, ancient history that has no relevance to. He left me the day after I was diagnosed with premature ovarian failure, Rebecca said to Catherine, her voice gentle despite the harsh truth of her words. He said he needed biological children to carry on his name and legacy. That adoption wasn't acceptable. Catherine stared at her husband, shock replacing confusion. Is that true? You left her because she couldn't have children. It was more complicated than that, James said stiffly. We wanted different things. The marriage wasn't working. The marriage was fine until you discovered I couldn't give you biological children, Rebecca corrected. Within 6 months, you were engaged to Catherine. Within a year, you had a son on the way. Catherine stepped back slightly, as if seeing her husband in a new light. You never told me that was why your first marriage ended. It wasn't relevant, James insisted. It was a different time in my life. The door opened and Michael entered, his expression concerned. Mom, is everything okay? Rebecca smiled at her son. Everything's fine, Michael. Judge Harrington and I were just clarifying some history, Michael. James looked between them. Your name is Michael Sullivan Morgan, the young man replied. My birth name was Sullivan. But Mom legally added her name when she adopted us. The door opened again and Zoe and Emma slipped in, protectively flanking their mother. And you must be the pianist, James said to Zoe, his voice strained, and the photographer. I'm Zoe, she said quietly. This is our sister, Emma. James looked at the 3 siblings. Then at Rebecca, understanding and disbelief warring in his expression. So this is why you're here. To show me that you built a family after all. We're here because we wanted to see the man who thought biology was more important than character, Michael said, his voice level but intense. The man who calls himself a champion of family values while having abandoned his wife when she needed him most. You have no right to judge me, James began, his voice hardening. You don't know anything about. We know everything, Emma interrupted. We know you married Mom when she was 25. We know you were building a political career even then. We know that when she couldn't have biological children, you discarded her like she was defective and married a younger woman who could give you the heirs you wanted. Emma, Rebecca said gently, placing a hand on her daughter's arm. That's enough. Catherine was staring at James as if seeing a stranger. Is this true? All of it? James's face flushed. It was a different time in my life. I was younger, more focused on certain traditional expectations. You told me your first marriage ended because of irreconcilable differences. Catherine said, her voice hollow, that you'd grown apart. That was easier than explaining the complexities of what. Catherine interrupted, of the fact that you abandoned your wife because she was infertile. She shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping. God, the irony. James frowned. What are you talking about? Catherine glanced at Rebecca and the children, then back to her husband. We should continue this conversation elsewhere. A knock on the door prevented further discussion. The campaign manager poked his head in. Judge Harrington, the Boston Globe reporter, is waiting for your interview, and several major donors are asking to speak with you. James straightened his tie, political mask sliding back into place. I'll be right there. He turned to Rebecca, his voice low and urgent. This isn't the time or place for this conversation. There is no conversation, James. Rebecca. CA replied calmly. We didn't come for confrontation or scandal. We came for truth, your version of the truth. He muttered. Tell me anything I've said that isn't factual, Rebecca challenged. Did you or did you not leave our marriage specifically because I couldn't have biological children? Did you or did you not tell me that adoption wasn't an option because you needed your own bloodline? James's silence was answer enough. That's what I thought, Rebecca said quietly. Go finish your campaign. Event, James, we won't disrupt anything further. As James turned to leave, Michael spoke up. Judge Harrington, I'll be tendering my resignation from the internship, effective immediately. I apologize for any inconvenience. James paused, studying the serious young man. You're a gifted organizer. It's a shame to lose your talent. I've learned a lot about politics during my brief time with your campaign, Michael replied, his meaning clear. More than I expected. James nodded stiffly and left, Catherine following after a last, conflicted glance at Rebecca. When the door closed, Emma was the first to speak. Did you see his face when he realized who we were? Worth it, totally worth it. The way he stumbled during his speech about family values. Zoe added with quiet satisfaction. It was like watching cognitive dissonance in real time. Rebecca looked at her children, their protective stances, their righteous indignation on her behalf, their unconcealed pride in having orchestrated this confrontation. Love overwhelmed her. I think we've accomplished what we came for, she said softly. It's time to go. But the gala isn't over, Emma protested. Don't you want to see what happens next? Catherine seemed pretty shocked by the truth. Rebecca shook her head. This was never about destroying James's marriage or campaign. It was about facing the past and being seen. We've done that. Mom's right, Michael said, ever the practical one. We've made our point with dignity, just as we agreed. As they gathered their things and prepared to leave, Rebecca took one last look around the opulent room that represented the world she had once belonged to. She felt no regret, no longing for the life she might have had, only gratitude for the one she had built instead. In the lobby, as they waited for their car, a voice called out, "Rebecca, wait." They turned to find Catherine Harrington approaching alone, her elegant composure slightly frayed. "I need to speak with you," she said, "privately if possible." Rebecca hesitated, then nodded to her children. "Go on up to the room. I'll be there shortly." When they were alone, Catherine's careful mask crumbled slightly. "I don't know what to say. I had no idea about why your marriage ended. It was a long time ago," Rebecca said. "You have nothing to apologize for, don't I?" Catherine's laugh was hollow. "I was the replacement, the fertile, younger model. You were 22. Rebecca said gently. "You fell in love with a charismatic man. You didn't destroy my marriage. It was already over." Catherine looked at her with something like wonder. "How can you be so gracious, after what he did, after what I unknowingly participated in?" Rebecca considered the question. "Because bitterness is a poison that only hurts the one who carries it. And because the life I built after James is more beautiful than anything I could have imagined with him." Catherine nodded slowly, then looked around to ensure they were alone before speaking again. "There's something else. You should know, something ironically fitting." She took a deep breath. "I've been struggling with infertility for the past 5 years." Rebecca's eyes widened. "What? We've been trying to have a third child," Catherine explained. "James wants a campaign baby, perfect for his family man image. But it hasn't happened. We've tried treatments, specialists. I was diagnosed with secondary infertility, no clear cause." "I'm sorry," Rebecca said, meaning it. "That's a painful road." "James has been less than supportive," Catherine continued, her voice tight. "He keeps saying we're not trying hard enough, that there must be something else we can do. He refuses to consider that it might not happen." "And how do you feel about that?" Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "Inadequate, broken, all the things I'm sure you felt 20 years ago." She wiped a tear quickly. "The irony isn't lost on me. The man who left his wife for being infertile is now facing the same issue with the replacement." Rebecca felt a wave of empathy for this woman who had unknowingly stepped into a pattern that was now repeating itself. "Catherine, your worth isn't defined by your fertility. No woman's is." "I know that intellectually," Catherine said, "but emotionally, when your husband makes it clear that's what he values most." Rebecca had no answer to that. She had faced the same devastating realization 2 decades earlier. "Your children are remarkable," Catherine said after a moment. "Protective, intelligent, accomplished. You've clearly done an extraordinary job raising them." "Thank you," Rebecca said. "They're the light of my life and clear proof that family isn't about DNA." Catherine added quietly, "It's about love and commitment." They stood in silence for a moment, 2 women connected by the same man, the same painful rejection 20 years apart. "What will you do?" Rebecca finally asked. Catherine straightened, composure returning. "I don't know yet. But seeing you tonight, seeing the family you built, the strength you found, it's clarified some things for me." She offered a small, genuine smile. "Thank you for that unexpected gift." They parted with a handshake that felt like the closing of a circle. As Rebecca watched Catherine return to the gala and her side, she felt no triumph, no vindication, only a quiet sense of peace. Upstairs, her children waited anxiously. What did she want? Emma demanded the moment Rebecca entered the room. "To apologize," Rebecca said simply, "and to share something private that isn't mine to disclose." Michael studied her face. "Are you okay? Was this whole thing a mistake?" Rebecca looked at her 3 children, the family she had built from love rather than biology, the proof that James Harrington had been wrong about what mattered most. "No," she said softly, "not a mistake, a completion." A circle closed. 1 week later, back in their Chicago home, a package arrived. Inside was a Boston newspaper with a small headline, "State Judge Harrington suspends Senate campaign, cites family priorities." The accompanying note, handwritten on cream stationery, reads simply, "Some truths, once seen, cannot be unseen. Thank you for your grace, C." Rebecca tucked the note away, a small smile playing at her lips. Not revenge, not even justice, exactly, just truth, finally acknowledged. And for her and her children, that was enough. Rebecca Morgan's journey from heartbreak to healing reminds us that true family values aren't about political slogans or perfect photos on campaign websites. They're about showing up, about choosing love when it's difficult, about creating bonds that transcend biology. If Rebecca's story resonated with you, we'd love to hear about your own experiences with found family. Have you built connections that go beyond blood? Have you found family in unexpected places? Share your stories in the comments below. And if you'd like to see more stories of resilience, redemption, and the true meaning of family, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Until next time.